Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto become Agent of Hell, part 4. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's get into the video. The next morning's breakfast was a tense affair. None of the ninja uttered a word, Kakashi waiting to hear the blonde's decision, on whether they were leaving or not, Sasuke because he was too busy glaring at the blonde, when he thought he wasn't looking, and Sakura because she was slightly afraid of him. Tazuna, Inari, and Tsunami were quiet too. The old man looked grim, as his daughter had told him of what may happen. Inari just wallowed in self-pity, and Tsunami worked on cooking, using it as an excuse to keep her shame hidden for what she had done the day before. Every time she looked at the blonde, the thoughts of him gripping her hips and pumping into her from behind entered her thoughts. Or how he played with her hair while she sucked on him. Naruto was sitting at the other end of the long table reading a small black book that seemed to be written in a strange language. They had all passed by him on their way to their seats, and glanced at the pages, to see what it was. The silence ended, as he snapped the book shut. Alright team, no one missed how reluctant the blonde was to call them that. I've gone over the situation, and have decided to continue on with the mission. Kakashi, you are given back control of your genin, and I suggest that to try, and teach them something lest they return to the village in a scroll, as well. Kakashi looked away. Now, from what I've been able to gather, Geto is the source of all the problems here in Wave. He has thugs patrolling the waters by boat, and has groups terrorize the people at random. He said mostly to himself, while closing his eyes before smirking, you and your team will continue to defend Tazuna. Sakura found her voice, what about you? Naruto didn't even look at her, you'll find out. With that he left them alone, and wasn't seen for the rest of the day. During the day, Kakashi had trained his students in a more challenging form of chakra control. He had already taught them the tree walking trick, and touched on the leaf technique a bit, so after a review, he had them do both at the same time. Sakura, just like with the tree walking, got it after a few tries while Sasuke struggled, as he usually did. His Sharingan could copy, but if anything, the one-eyed man had been able to beat into the Uchiha, that his eyes couldn't solve everything when it came to. Of course it had only worked with chakra control, he refused to use any other way to learn, always using his eyes to copy them. Kakashi had left them for a little while, to go check on Tazuna before returning, telling Sakura to go watch the man once he returned, saying that she had practiced enough. He soon left, as well, leaving the Uchiha to his training. The breeder was there until the sun went down, only returning just as dinner was served. Tsunami had cooked a large meal of rice and fish stew, rice being as cheap as it was despite Geto, and a family friend usually giving them fish every now and then. Naruto hadn't returned yet, his seat from that morning was still out, and slightly to the side. Sensei, Sakura asked, breaking the silence, who is that guy anyway? I've never seen him around before. Well, the question was simple, and quiet, it got everyone's attention. His name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, he started only for them to cut him off. Namikaze, as in? He nodded, yes, Naruto is the son of the 4th Hokage. Kakashi told her over his steaming bowl of stew. He had a son? Sakura asked confusedly. He nodded before looking down at the now empty bowl, yes, but because of all the enemies his father had, Naruto's parentage was hidden. Not that it helped, everyone jumped at the sudden voice, and looked to see Naruto eating a bowl of rice, as if he'd been there all along. He licked his lips where a red tint was making it fade. You remember right, Kakashi? That day 10 years ago? He questioned looking out the corner of his eyes. You were part of the team that found me, am I correct? The man nodded, the image of the supposedly murdered child burned into his memory. You know, I was technically dead for quite some time, he chuckled. Death can change your views on things. What are you talking about? Sasuke demanded. Naruto looked at him then, as Kakashi, that's right, the story wasn't released, was it? Well, let me tell you, 10 years ago I was kidnapped by cult, they tortured and beat me before using my broken body as an offering to their pathetic kami. He lifted his fishness shirt and showed them a faded scar just below his heart. I was stabbed through the chest and left to die in that place. I have no idea how long I was there, but Anbu found me at some point. He laughed, found out that my heart had been sliced open, and stopped for a while, but I came back and was taken out of the village later on, letting everyone believe that I was dead, or at least still was. That was the cover story at least. Yet another thing that Sarutobi had cooked up. Dying is a fascinating thing, your mind rises to a higher plane of thinking, and you feel enlightened. You understand feelings, the meaning of life, where you fear death, the reason for living. He closed his eyes. I'd say that my death is what made me who I am. Inari looked at him from under his bucket hat. What is the meaning of life, and the reason for living? The blonde looked at him without turning. The reason for living varies from person to person. Real mothers live to care for their child, real fathers live to support them, some people live to prove or protect something, and most men instinctively live, only to pass on their genes, as much as possible. My reason to live is simple, I live sourly to spit in the face of Kami, to spite, and mock Shinigami by escaping its clutches. Naruto seemed to be insane in their eyes. But the meaning of life is simple, the meaning of life is to live, and die. You live your life how you want, following any ideology you want, as you carve your place into the world until the day you die in your bed surrounded by family, or alone on a road wondering what happened, much like a group of men harassing the town I met this afternoon. He put the empty bowl on the table, and smirked at them, then to Tsunami, "Thanks for the rice and stew, it was great. I'll be in my room, so, if you need me, put it off until morning." Kyubi curled up in the middle of her master's bed, and cuddled his pillow. The scent was still there from the previous nights that his head rested there. Despite everything, she missed him. Sure, he was her master, and wouldn't hesitate to remind her in the cruelest manner he could think of should she disobey, but without his body to curl up, she began to feel the feeling that had haunted her for 10 years. Loneliness. Spending all eternity in the final level of hell was a terrible fate. Frozen so that only your face was free, cursed to suffer the pain, while being utterly alone in your own personal hell. Unlike the other circles that had you suffering alongside fellow sinners, you were alone, the only company being the sounds of your own pain-filled wails and sobs. You couldn't even go insane there. Any hope of a little voice growing in the back of your head was a dream that was if you could ignore the pain long enough to dream. That level of hell was meant for traitors mostly, those who betrayed their own for various reasons. Lucifer himself was once imprisoned there a great many years ago before escaping and taking over. The punishment was fitting. Once you betray your friends, they leave you and never trust you again, so why would you share your pain with another soul? As the door to the room that Naruto had taken for himself closed, he was greeted by the faint smell of rot and freshly spilled blood. "I recognize that scent," he said with a smirk, while turning to look at the smaller figure curled up in the corner, rocking back and forth while clutching something to his chest. It was a human, or it looked like one. It let out a small giggle of insanity, a cute feminine giggle, as it looked up to the blonde. The little girl had long matted black hair and soulless black eyes. Her skin was pale as snow with red smears all over her face and arms. She looked half dead, mostly because she was. "Haha, hi Naruto-sama." The little girl around the age of 10 giggled as she clutched the item into her chest. What are you doing here, little Nightwalker?" The Nightwalker was a demon that often was confused with vampires, the blood-sucking creature of myth. Nightwalkers were very efficient hunters who could hide in towns full of humans and reduce it to a bloody ghost town in a matter of weeks, depending on how large the place was, and if people were too afraid to live there, packing their things and leaving as soon as they could. Other than her teeth and transformation ability, Nightwalkers were very strong and fast, sometimes running fast enough that all you see is the after images. They also had heightened senses, able to sense things from far off, although, in the rain, a Nightwalker's senses were drastically weakened. The young woman smiled, her mouth full of bloody jagged teeth, before holding up the item. "I wanted to thank you, Naruto-sama. I haven't left hell in years, and it's so good to finally have my favorite meal again." Naruto nodded, looking at the item as she bit into it. It was a human arm. Closed her eyes and giggled to herself as she ripped flesh and bone to pieces with her teeth, the blood dripping down her pale skin and into her clothing. Naruto had summoned her from hell to take care of another group in town. He had met her in the circle of gluttony, the place where most of her kind resided, torturing the fat slobs who were there because their lives revolved around food. Even though gluttony didn't mean overeating all the time, you'd be surprised at how many there were. She loudly swallowed the human flesh and looked at him. "I just wanted to thank you, Naruto-sama. Is there anything else you'd like for me to do?" Her tone was that of lust. Naruto shook his head. "No, I will not have sex with you, and that's final," he said sternly. She patted again, cursing her small body and slow rate of growth. Naruto patted her head. "Now run along, it's time to go home." "Do I have to?" He nodded. "Yes you do. I can't have a little Nightwalker running around and eating people left and right." She got off the floor and threw herself at him, wrapping her arms around his midsection. "Can I come back please?" she begged, drawing out a plea in the word please. "Sure, I guess," he said with a shrug, ignoring the blood that was now sticking to his clothing. "I could find something for you to do later. There's always someone who needs to die, and your family are perfect assassins." "Really?" she squeaked while fluttering her eyes up at him cutely, the void-like eyes ruining the effect. He nodded, and lo, the night demon prowls, shadowed by the stench of murder, and trailed by the lifeblood of man. The beast stalks the dark in search of its next meal, claws sharp as sabers, and jaws as quick as lightning. It yearns for the flesh of humans, and thirsts for their crimson fluid. They hide in the light, as they hunt and feast on their prey at night. Hunters of shadows, assassins of hell, tormentors of the gluttonous. Gifted by our hellish lord, cursed by the heavenly dogs, and feared by humans, as killers of the dark. No being is safe from the ultimate hunter. Yum found herself captivated, and blushing, as he complimented her kind. She knew that it was a scripture from the Black Bible, which included most demons and devils in hell, but she had never studied it as much as he did, and unlike him, couldn't recite it to save her life. Naruto hummed, "Now run along, little Nightwalker," he told her, before nudging her away. "Your family's probably looking for you." Sticking her tongue out, Yum jumped through the window and faded into the shadows, only to leap back in a second later to grab the severed arm that she dropped before and leave again. Naruto shook his head and lay down, resting and waiting for the tsunami which was sure to come in a little while. Pun not intended. Deep in the forests of some unknown region in the elemental nations, an arm grabbed at the ridge of a large crater, followed by another arm. With a huff of annoyance, the owner pulled herself up and dusted off her white kimono and looked around, her green eyes softening as she saw the wilderness. "Back in the human realm, huh?" she said with a small grin. "I'd forgotten the smell of the forests." She turned and started walking. "I'm coming, honey, Ka-san's coming." Kushina stood over the body of a bandit who thought that the lone Redeed was an easy target. In her hand was a naginata, roughly 5.5 feet long with a foot-long blade. The shaft was white with gold designs all over the end, as well as around the area where it connected with the blade. The blade itself was a shiny silver with 3 gold rings in the back, jingling when she swung it, making them hit each other at the back of the blade. The man would have lived had he not made the comment about raping her. She had been planning on just knocking him out and leaving, but his threat pushed it. So she summoned her weapon, which was blessed by Kami herself, and struck him down like the animal he was. Killing him like a rabid dog who had just attacked a child, but unlike the dog, he would rot in the forest and not be buried. Leaving the corpse, Kushina used the weapon like a traveler's cane and continued her journey to find her son. She was confident in her abilities, having been a well-respected ninja, before dying then becoming an angel under Kami. Using her skill with a sword, a knack for learning to become one of the strongest, quickly earning the respect of her fellow angels, and becoming a trainer for the new soldiers of the heavenly army. Once you died, and were allowed into the heavenly realm, you were offered a choice later on, to continue, and join the other souls in heaven, or, if you felt guilty about something, or wanted a second chance, you could be reborn, and have a whole new chance. You wouldn't remember your past life though, as your past memories would be sealed until your death. She had started to choose that, hoping that she could grow up, and be with her son, before learning that the chances of being born in Konoha were slim. Not only that, but even if she was reborn, as his best friend she wouldn't remember giving birth to him at all. So she decided to stay, waiting for the day that she and her child were reunited, planning on meeting him at the pearly gates, and opening them for him when he arrived. But sadly, the hatred and fear from the Kyuubi attack ruined all the dreams she had of a happy reunion with him. He had sold his soul, cursing Kami-sama for allowing something like that to happen to him. At the time, she had been training angels in swordsmanship with multiple weapons, earning herself a reputation as a badass swordswoman that was off limits. Many students worked themselves ragged trying to impress her, their beautiful and womanly teacher. But she refused any advances, being a nice queen like the goddesses of life, death, and fate. But when she was called before Kami and Shinigami to be told of what happened, she mourned for many months, never going out in public. When she had returned, her students suffered. Her training regime had grown harsher and more demanding. She had decided to take it out on them. But while their dreams of the old loving Kushina faded, visions of Kushina the dominatrix replaced them. The idea of her being a deadly forbidden fruit made them want her more. Seemed that even holy beings were susceptible to lust, although only the trainees showed it. To be a true angel you had to control yourself or live as a normal spirit in heaven. But now she had the chance to find and cleanse her son's soul, using the strongest holy powers she could to change him back and absolve him of his sins. Minato was already gone, his soul forever locked within the Shinigami for the crime of condemning his own flesh and blood to imprison a demon. Had he asked, she could have gotten rid of the demon, but the summon contract stated that once she was summoned, she would do whatever she had to, within reason of course, then take the summoner's soul. At first she had been a little angry with the Shinigami, but let it go once she took her soul, and answered a few things. Then she just stayed angry at the man she once called her lover. Kushina sped up, wanting to reach the village soon to try and find her son. She would be damned if she lost Naruto again. By the end of the week, Wave had already seen a distinct lack of extortion and a rise in murder. At first it was nothing but a few mutilated corpses here and there that were unidentified, but now people would find large pools of blood in the middle of streets that weren't there the night before. After the third night people realized that it wasn't Gato's thugs killing people, but someone killing the thugs and ripping their bodies to shreds. No one knew who or what was going about it, but they were whispering that it was the work of Konoha ninjas, seeing as they all knew that Tazuna had hired them. Team 7, Tazuna, and his family suspected Naruto after his conversation with them that night, where he admitted to killing a group of thugs before returning. But something was strange now. The only reason they were able to ID the bodies now was because instead of finding a piece here and there they were finding whole bodies with chunks of flesh ripped off and eaten. The holes and wounds have teeth marks too large to be an animal. The ninjas and civilians sharing the home shook as they figured that Naruto was the one eating the thugs. After all, he had a mouthful of pointed teeth that looked sharp enough to do so, seeing as he showed them off daily with his grins or smirks. No one had the guts to ask, though, so they just accepted it as the most likely truth. Naruto yawned as he woke up on his feuding, the sounds of screaming and pleading acting like an alarm clock which brought him back to his childhood in hell. The blonde got up and stretched before dressing in his usual clothing, which Tsunami had picked up from a pile next to her own the previous night, and returned a few hours earlier, freshly washed and neatly folded. He walked down the stairs and saw two men threatening Inari, Tsunami's son, while she was tied up in ropes. The boy was on his ass crying with a black eye as the man laughed at him. As the other suggested that they have fun with the girl before bringing her to the bridge, Naruto frowned. Tsunami was his toy, and he wasn't too good with sharing anything besides his bed, as long as said person in question is, and always has been, a woman. How amusing, a pair of humans whom think that they're tough beating up a child and contemplating raping said child's mother. Shows just how low human morals and values have fallen, he said, appearing behind the one who had hit Inari, making him spin around while the man behind him, holding Tsunami, jumped at the sudden appearance. The man in front of him was a larger muscled guy with no shirt on and an eye patch. He tried to reach for his sword, but froze as a wave of coldness washed over him. Looking down, he coughed up blood, splattering the arm that was buried through his ribs with the crimson fluid, before Naruto ripped his limb out, bringing a still beating heart with it. "May your damned soul forever burn in the black abyss," the blonde devil said smoothly before his hand was engulfed in fire, turning the heart to ashes. The other man stiffened as Naruto turned his head and stared at him from the corner of his eye. He took a step back, letting the rope leash go, as he took a deep breath in fear. "Burn." As that one word left Naruto's lips, the thug cried out, as he felt his insides heat up suddenly. Inari and Tsunami watched in horror, as he screamed before fire erupted from his mouth, nose, eyes, and ears, and burned him from the inside out until nothing was left, not even the ashes. "Keikami," Inari gasped, as he stared. What or why you? Naruto's eyes flashed crimson. "I am Naruto, the devil's helper." Appearing at the bridge, Naruto found himself looking at the backs of Team 7, Tazuna, and two other ninja, while a midget in his suit mocked them while his army of thugs stood menacingly behind him. He walked up to Kakashi from behind, who was huffing, while the unknown male ninja, who was armed with a large sword, was being looked over by another shorter ninja, who seemed to be slowly healing his limp arms. "It again, you get yourself knee deep in shit," he said, making the group turn to him in shock. Kakashi let out a sigh in relief. "Naruto, we're tired and outnumbered," the blonde finished for him with an uncaring tone, before looking at the two other ninja. "And who are your new friends?" "Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist," Kakashi answered. "I don't know who she is." Naruto nodded, as he looked at the slightly older girl healing Zabuza. "I see," he looked at Zabuza. "Well, demon of the bloody mist, how about you sit this one out, while I show these Konoha genin and their half-assed sensei how to take care of things." He pushed past her and grabbed the handle of Zabuza's head cleaver, pulling it from the stone and resting it on his shoulder, much to the owner's chagrin. Naruto ignored what the little man was saying and smirked. "Your soul is full of sin, I can tell. Prepare thyself, you're going to hell." His movements were a blur as his arm swung forward and sent the large cleaver spinning vertical to the ground, the hull and the blade making a horrible whirring sound, before finding its mark, buried deep into the bridge between two halves of Gato's body, splattering his blood and gray matter all over the small army around him. "Why, you just killed our meal ticket," one yelled after finding his courage. Naruto shrugged. "Full such as you could starve for all I care. Hey, let's raid the town," one yelled from the back, making them all cheer in agreement, seemingly unaffected by the body of their employer. Humming, as they took a few steps towards him, Naruto snapped his fingers, causing a wall of black flame to appear behind him, cutting off any way to get past him and into the town. Now, we can't have any of that." He snapped his fingers again, and another wall roared to life behind them, cutting off their escape. "Your comrades were perfect meals for my little friend, but her family was getting jealous." He chuckled before making the flames rise and blocking the view of the Konoha ninjas, but still allowing them to hear what was going on. Loud chattering noises echoed out, and the whole town of Wave froze, as the pleading screams of Gato's thugs rang out under the sinister laughter of Naruto. The ninjas stood or sat in horror, as the hundreds of thugs were killed. No one could see what was going on, but Sakura soon got a first-hand look at the aftermath, as a body was thrown through the flames, landing just feet away and sending blood spatter on her feet and legs. Zabuza looked at the body. Even when he killed his class, as a child he had never seen such brutality. Besides the major burns all over him, the thug was missing most of his face and neck, all of which had been ripped off by teeth. Soon the fires started flickering, just as the last scream died out. Simply put, it was a massacre. Every thug that had worked for Gato had died for him in the most brutal and morbid fashion that even the most deranged maniac couldn't think of. Corpses littered the bridge, most missing limbs and body parts. Those who still had faces were twisted into painful soundless cries of mercy, seemingly suffering even though they were long since dead. Sakura and Sasuke lost it and threw up, showing them what they had eaten earlier. They heaved harder as it landed on the still smoldering body. Kakashi and Zabuza held back their gags, both having fought in wars and witnessed the horrors. That's not to say they were numb to the sight, both were pale and had a cold sweat running down them. This also explained the mystery of who was killing the thugs before, or better yet, it explained what was killing them. 10 figures were hunched over different bodies, their teeth loudly ripping and tearing at the flesh or crunching on bone. But the 11th figure, Naruto, wasn't hunched over a body like they had expected. He was holding a man up by the neck, as he choked and gagged, barely clinging to life, as he rapidly lost blood from a severed arm and leg. They couldn't hear what he was saying, but whatever it was had to be a short, one-sided conversation, as he soon slung the man aside, ignoring his screaming, as he sailed over the guardrail and plummeted to his death. The fall from this height was guaranteed to be fatal. The surface tension of the water would make the impact feel like slamming into a concrete wall. After Tsunade, the Slug Princess threw you across Konoha. Even then, if he was strong enough to survive that, he wouldn't be able to swim. He had already lost 2 limbs and a lot of blood. Slowly, Naruto turned to them and smirked. Wave was now safe. The cancerous little man was now dead. He turned back to his Nightwalkers and whistled, making them look up and disappear from sight. Kakashi, you may continue your mission. Mine is complete. He turned and began walking towards the unfinished end of the bridge. I will be returning to the village and rather hope that you can handle watching an old man build a bridge. Just before he disappeared, the townspeople of Wave, who had come to see what was going on, burst into cheers, proclaiming the blonde a true hero of Wave, leaving Sasuke to fume, as they ignored him. The door to the Hokage's office cracked open, and Hiruzen peeked out. Looking down the halls he grinned, then shut the door before locking it, and pulling the guest chair in front of his desk over, and jamming it under the handle. Clapping his hands of imaginary dirt, the old man ran to each window, and locked them all, closing the blinds until the room was pitch black. He turned the reading lamp on his desk on, and opened his desk, pulling out a little orange book, and a bottle of sake. He had been working hard, and deserved this break. Taking a sip, and giggling, the old perverted man kicked his feet up onto his desk, and began reading, enjoying the erotic story, and pictures. He turned the page. Hey, go back, I wasn't finished. Sir Toby nodded. Oh sorry. He turned back to the previous page until the person said that he was done, and thanked him. Oh, it's no trouble, Naruto. He chuckled before going back to reading, taking another sip of his sake. His eyes widened as he spat the sake across the room, and fell back, dropping his book and the bottle, as he yelped, and flipped his chair back onto the floor. Naruto smirked, as he looked down at the floored Hokage who twitched, as his beard dripped sake. Naruto, you're gonna be the death of me, he sighed, as the blonde helped him up. So you tell me. The old man sat in his chair after Naruto set it right side up, and hid his book back inside his desk with a sigh, before listening to Naruto report what happened in Wave. I see, the old man said, trying to digest what he had been told. Naruto told him about the beating he gave the genin, as well as his demon friends, although he gave the Hokage the expression that they were his summons. All that, minus the parts where he had his way with the client's daughter, down to the gory ending where his summons killed and ate the army of thugs Gato brought with him, was a lot to take in. Although Sir Toby was glad that he was working with him, having the blonde as an enemy would be a nightmare. After a minute, the Hokage finally accepted it. Well, Naruto-kun, I'll have your payment for the mission ready soon, but there was something I wanted to talk with you about. HN. The old man leafed through some papers, and pulled out a sheet detailing the Chunin exams. When the exams start, all the genin are to report to the testing building for the first test. After that, any who pass are going to be led to the second area by Enko. She's. Naruto stopped him. Yes, I know of her. Images of a purple-haired girl stabbing a man in the balls with a dango stick after copying a feel ran through his mind. Before meeting the Hokage for the first time after returning from the dead, Naruto had taken a walk around, and witnessed the female's fury against the pervert. Well, she's taking care of the second stage, but due to some things that have happened in her past, the civilian council doesn't trust her. Naruto nodded. And you want me to help her? A way to say kiss my ass. I still got my way. He got a happy nod as an answer, and shrugged. Okay, fine. You tell her to meet me, and tell me what the plan is, and I'll help out. In the fourth circle of hell, Gato opened his eyes, and screamed. The last thing he remembered was laughing before hearing a loud whirring sound, before finding himself standing in this strange place. Where am I? He screamed in fear. A deep rumbling voice from behind echoed. Turning stiffly, Gato started hyperventilating at the sight of a large red giant with glowing red eyes, and 2 large tusks curving up out of his mouth. "You sure got a pretty move," he rumbled before advancing on the little human. Gato screamed like a little bitch. Returning to the manor, Naruto was greeted by a completely spotless house, and a sleeping fox curled up on the couch. He silently moved to stand over her, and knelt down to her face before screaming loudly, almost enough to make a few pink-haired females feel like their place in the world was threatened. Kyuubi's crimson eyes snapped open, and she shot off like an arrow, screaming in fright and surprise, as gravity proves its existence, bringing her down to the floor behind the couch with a thud. Naruto smirked. The banshees of hell had taught him that trick, and while he couldn't deafen someone like some of the older ones, could or destroy things with sound waves like the queen could, but he could make someone's ears ring, and scare the shit out of people, possibly even disorient them. He got on the couch, and leaned over the back to see Kyuubi face down on the floor, her foot twitching every now and then. Normally I'd punish you for sleeping on the job, but seeing that everything's dusted, I'll let it slide. He took a sniff, lemon scented. She just switched, and he stood up, walking off into the kitchen, to make himself a sandwich. Later that day, Naruto was walking through the village with his hooded coat covering his face. Usually something like this was cause for concern, but strangely, any passing person seemed to look past him, as if he wasn't there. He had left a catatonic Kyuubi in a daze under his sheets at the manor after finishing his sandwich, so he was alone. He turned a corner where he spotted a ninja couple talking back and forth. "You need to slow down, you're going to kill yourself," the woman said, as he took a handful of pills. The man in question wore standard clothing and had a bandana tied around his forehead with the Lee symbol in the center of his forehead. His face was pale and sickly. He looked like a walking flu virus. "Sorry Yugao, but these damn pills cost too much." He stopped coughing a few times before taking a deep breath. "I have to do these missions to buy them." Naruto cocked his head to the side and smirked. He sensed a soul ripe for the picking, and that girl looked nice too. She had fair skin and brown doe-like eyes. Her hair was purple and flowed down to her ear. Even from his place a little ways away he could see the love she held for the sick man. Love that could be used to twist her to his will and force her to sign a contract selling her soul to him. He blinked as they kissed and parted ways. He seemed to have missed what they had said. But well, no matter. He only needed to know what could be used to twist the human heart. He didn't need this story. Fading away, which scared a few passing civilians, Naruto followed her chakra signature until she stopped at one of the many shinobi apartments available to only Jounin rank ninjas, and up. The purple-haired woman unlocked her door and walked in, shutting it behind her and locking it. Naruto followed, hiding in the shadows, as she removed 3 hidden blades from her clothing before appearing just out of arm's reach. "Tell me, how does it feel to see your lover suffer from his chronic illness?" he asked suddenly, laughing darkly, as a 4th hidden blade was sent sailing into a wall behind him, narrowly missing his neck. Yugao spun around and found a hooded man standing a little ways away, his arms crossed and totally unfazed by the attack. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Naruto: "No my dear, it's not what I want, but what you want," he said with a hidden grin. "You may call me the benefactor, and you want your darling Hei to get well, no?" Yugao pulled yet another knife out and held it threateningly. "His condition is incurable. Stop trying to trick me. We've been to every medic and doctor in Fire Country." Naruto chuckled. "Yes, only in Fire Country. What would you say if I told you that I could make it so your darling swordsman would never feel the pain of his sickness again? No more coughing fits and aching chest." "I'd call you a lie." Naruto gave a low hum, almost growl-like. "So you would like proof? Fine," he said with an uncaring tone. "We shall meet again, and then we will see if you feel the same." Yugao blinked and looked around as he disappeared in a black shadow, scanning the room in case he was still there. His words echoed in her ears and made her heart clutch in anger. How dare he tell her such blatant lies like that? Hei had been sick for years, and every doctor had told him that it was incurable, that he would have to take medicine to keep it from getting too bad. It wouldn't have been so tough had his health benefits not been cut, making the price of his meds skyrocket. He was already unable to do some missions because of his condition, so he had to work twice as hard to buy what he needed, never asking her for money or help until she forced him to accept her help. She sighed. Hei was too noble. He was so embarrassed when he had to take her money, and that was what she loved about him, although it enraged her to no end at times. The next morning, Yugao woke up to loud knocking at her door. Standing up and throwing on a robe, she walked to the door and opened it to find her lover standing there. "Hei-kun, I gave you a key to my apartment, you know," she said while rubbing her eyes, only to squeak as he grabbed her around the waist and spun around while holding her to his chest. "Yugao-chan, you're never gonna believe it." He laughed before giving her a deep soul-stealing kiss before pulling back. "I'm cured." She gaped, not believing what she had heard. "Oh really?" He nodded. "Not one cough today. I haven't even taken my meds." They shared another kiss, which soon led to her wiggling out of his grip, slamming the door, and dragging him to her room. Unknown to either of them, Naruto was grinning as he watched from a rooftop across the street. Hours later, Yugao woke up in bed again, still feeling the soreness from what she had done. Hei had already left, having guard duty today while she had the day off. Laying back, she blushed at the stickiness on her thighs and took a deep breath, giggling as she smelled the thick air of sex that lingered. "Was that proof enough?" asked that dark voice from the night before. Jumping, she sat up and pressed her back into the headboard before going for the kunai she had on her nightstand, only to feel the bare top. "Looking for this?" the man asked, holding up a handful of kunai, ones that she recognized as her hidden knives that had been hidden around the room. "Sorry, but I couldn't have you attacking me just now. We have much to talk about." He walked to the foot of her bed. Your darling Haid has been healed, as I had promised that I could. He spoke before throwing the weapons aside, sending the 5 blades sailing into the wall. But I didn't do it out of the kindness in my black little heart. I want something in return. His head traveled down, making her look down to see that her blanket was doing very little to cover her nude body, and fully exposing her cunt which had dry semen on it. She quickly covered herself up. Pervert, you only helped him so that you could have your way with me, she accused. He chuckled. My dear, if I had wanted to fuck you I'd have done so already. As a matter of fact, I would have ambushed you hours ago, tied you walking virus up, and forced him to watch as I used you. She shuddered at his cruel tone, and watched as he pulled a roll of paper from his pocket and threw it in her lap. What I want is more valuable than your body, much more valuable. I want your soul. She looked up in a snap. What? He looked up, showing his glowing red eyes in the darkness of his hood. Your immortal soul, little human, I want it, and once you sign that contract, it will belong to me. She swiped the paper away, throwing it to the floor. Never. He nodded slowly. I see. Well then I believe you'll want to see this. The hooded man held up his hand and showed her the viewing orb, making her gasp. But she was unable to comment as the picture swirled and showed Haid standing at his post with a huge grin. I healed the man. My power was inside him. He spoke darkly, before hovering his hand over the top. Yuga's eyes widened as Haid started to rub his chest before coughing. He coughed and coughed, dropping to his knees before blood spattered the ground, making the other Chunin flare his chakra as a call for help. Stop it. She cried only for him to slowly close his hand, making Haid shake and cough harder as blood came from his nose and mouth. Please stop, you're hurting him. Haid passed out and laid in his own blood, his shaking stopping as Naruto removed his hand. Sign the contract, give me your soul, and I swear that he will never suffer from his illness ever again. Despite being an Anbu, Yugao had tears streaming down her face. Anything, just please stop it. She sniffed before moving to pick the contract up off the floor. In blood, Naruto spoke as she looked for a pen. She slowly bit her index finger and signed the bottom of the paper before the man took it from her, looking it over before folding it up and sticking it inside his coat. Foolish human, signing the contract without even reading it. Wah! He signed it without even reading it. You gave away more than your own soul. She sat up more. What are you talking about? He chuckled darkly. My dear, you sold me, not only your soul, but your free will too, as well as the soul of the one closest to you. Her heart fell down into the pit of her stomach, a feeling that worsened as a black symbol appeared above her pubes. You belong to me, mind, body, and soul. Once again, he disappeared, his mocking laughter echoing in her ears. Just moments before, an Anbu knocked on her door to alert her that her lover was in the hospital. Her mind was still processing what he told her, as she almost mechanically told her fellow Anbu that she would go just as soon as she was dressed. It finally dawned on her, and made her fall to her knees just before leaving, just feet from her apartment door. In her panicked state, she had sold her soul along with her lovers, damning them both. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them out, clenching her eyes hard and rubbing them. Naruto smirked as he watched the purple-haired woman walk out of her apartment and lock it before using the body flicker to travel to the hospital, where they would all witness Haid's amazing recovery. Having the girl's soul and freedom would make an excellent addition to his conquest. Had she read the damn paper and refused parts of it, he could have easily avoided parts of it, but no, she was so quick to save her lover that she signed it in her own blood. She was his new pet, even if she didn't know it yet. Better yet, she was carrying something else that now belonged to him. The feeling was faint, extremely so, and concentrated in her womb. She was pregnant, and, as they were connected still, he would get the unborn child's pure soul, as well. A little puppet to twist and mold before it even left the womb, the perfect blank slate. He stopped his train of thought and looked off to the side. Whoever that holy orb belonged to wasn't in a hurry to hide or find him. It was potent and slowly approaching the village of Konoha as a civilian pace, stopping every day for a few hours then returning to his pace. It would probably show up during the Chunin exams, while the customary festivities were going on to hide in with the crowds. He wasn't stupid. The being was baiting him, always flaring its holy aura to try and bring it towards them. Stories of the war taught him of that tactic. Send someone with a powerful aura out into the field, tell them to flare its aura like an untrained fighter, so when the demon attacked, you surprise it and slay it. A surprisingly low tactic for such high and mighty angels. He wouldn't be fooled by the call, he would treat it like the call of the succubi, ignoring its allure and making it come to him. Thinking about it, he saw the irony of his thoughts. Angels were dogs of kami, holy dogs. He was no dog. He wouldn't answer its call, it would come after him like the filthy mud it was. A few weeks had passed in the hidden village of the Leaf. Its passing seemed to fly by for some, almost like flipping to the next chapter in a book. But for some the wait was unbearable, like waiting days and days for something to happen that you knew would. The village was also seeing an increase in visitors, as the Chunin exams reared its head. Hopeful genin pestered their senses to allow them to enter. Greedy street vendors carefully painted over their signs, jacking up the price of useless knickknacks and cheap souvenirs. But to the ninjas it was a time to hone in your skills and prepare yourself. The genin chosen to enter the exam were to represent the village and hopefully advance to the rank of chunin. Although this year was special, various ninja from all over the nations were coming to fight and show off for their villages, their kage, and their daimyo. But despite all the excitement, none of the ninja missed the sudden appearance of a cloaked woman who followed the Hokage's top guard around. Officially, she was another guard for Sarutobi, Naruto's second-in-command, and the blonde's right-hand woman. Unofficially, the rumor mill around the village had her pegged, as a skank who was trying to get into the blonde's pants. Although, the male side of the rumor pool had her pegged as one of the most beautiful women ever, despite the fact that they had never seen her face because of the hooded cloak. Both had been suspected to be an item, and were dubbed the most wanted and desired couple of the leaf. The irony of it being, both sides were right to a point. Kyuubi was indeed a beauty, and they were sleeping together, but that was it. They weren't an item, and she wasn't trying to get into his pants, as they never had to try. Sarutobi questioned Naruto about the woman, and Naruto explained to him that since foreign ninjas were coming into the village, that he figured that he should get a little extra protection for the old man in case something happened. Kayu, as she had been introduced, was an efficient jutsu user, stealthy enough to hide from most Anbu, and had natural talent with. She was real good at information gathering too, so good that Naruto usually had her comb the village for spies that weren't supposed to be there, and to the shock of many, she had found 2 spies who, after a quick public interrogation by Naruto, screamed, as loudly as they could, that they were spies from Iowa. Well, one did, the other had bitten his tongue off, and would swallow the blood until he passed out from bloodless. The fox also found a few spies bearing the masks of roots snooping around her master's grounds. They were tight-lipped and killed themselves before any real interrogation could happen, but their masks were enough proof to make Danzo sweat. Speaking of which, Naruto didn't inform the old about it, sending the bodies back in a scroll, while keeping the heads, masks, and equipment. Along with the sealed bodies, he wrote a small letter threatening him to keep his roots from his property or else. The threat wasn't detailed, but it did the job. Naruto leaned against the wall of the Hokage's office with his eyes closed, listening, as the Jounin meeting went on. He was dressed in his normal fishnet shirt and vest, which was open, showing off his evil eye tattoo and pentagram necklace. Beside him stood Kayu, who had been given the rank of under Naruto's exclusive command. Her cloak covered everything from her calf muscles up, her exposed legs, and feet covered by a skin-tight rubbery material. Think RE5. Jill battlesuit. The purpose of this meeting was to nominate teams for the exams. I was proud to state that his youthful team was ready for the exams, and was shocked when not only his rival Kakashi, but the other 2 senseis of the Rookie 9 said the same. The others made small remarks, but Iruka, their instructor who taught them in the academy, and just so happened to be helping the Hokage today, made the strongest argument, and the loudest. "They're not kids anymore," Kakashi stated while reading his book. "When they passed the genin exam, they became tools for the village. I believe they're ready for this, and frankly, you have no say in this." Iruka glared at the man, as Hiruzen exhaled a puff of smoke, and Naruto made a little noise. While it was a small noise, they all heard it, and turned to look at the young who, despite his age, outranked them. "Would you like to say something about Naruto-kun?" the Hokage asked. Naruto hummed, "Actually, Hokage-sama, I do. I wish to ask if this is a matter of truly believing that your genin is ready or proud." Kakashi looked at him sharply. "Are you accusing me of something?" The blonde nodded. "Indeed I am. My team can handle this exam," the pervert growled, forgetting just who Naruto was, and what he knew. Naruto gave a cold laugh, one that dripped sarcasm, and stung like ice. "You thought the same before taking them on a C-rank mission, and we know how that ended." Kakashi looked down, as he was reminded once again of his failure. "Honestly, from what I saw in my brief time there, letting that team in the exams would be a big mistake. The Uchiha is as stable as Orochimaru at a Boy Scouts meeting, and would betray the village the moment someone offers him quick and easy training. Then there's your little fangirl." Enough said. Another Jounin spoke up, but most people would come to see him fight in the finals. "Should he make it?" the blonde responded in a snap. "Or are you admitting that you're planning on breaking the rules and going against tradition?" Imagine the surprise our daimyo would feel to learn that the whole thing was rigged, so that the already unstable Uchiha's ego could reach new limits. "Naruto, that's enough. We get the idea," the Hokage said while putting down his pipe and turning to look at the others. "And I happen to agree with him. With his current mental state, he is more of a danger than anything else." The Hokage-sama. Kakashi sputtered, only for the old man to hold up his hand. "Kakashi, you have until the deadline to prove that Sasuke is qualified to join," he told the man. He nodded. "Yes sir, I know they can handle anything. When can I prove it to you?" Hiruzen gave him a small grin. "Not to me," he nodded to Naruto, "to him. Since he brought it up and presented the strongest evidence, you must prove to him that your team is ready." Naruto raised an eyebrow as he heard that, then smirked as he thought of the perfect way to ruin the Uchiha's chance. "Since you're so sure that they can handle anything, I'll go right now and test them. Am I correct in assuming that you told them to meet at your usual area near the memorial stone?" Kakashi nodded dumbly. Then I'll be back soon. If things go as I planned, this won't take too long. Come along, Kaiu. With that, Naruto vanished, and the cloaked woman followed, vanishing with a small plume of smoke. At Team 7's training ground, the team sat around doing various things. Sasuke was brooding, Sakura sat across the clearing, staring dreamily at the brooding bastard, and their new teammate, a quiet boy with a wired smile, and the gayest set of clothing sat against a tree painting. His name was Sai. Kakashi had told them to meet there hours ago, and like dumbasses, they arrived right on time, leaving them to wait 3 to 5 hours before he would show up. Sai heard a small noise, and turned his head to find out what it was. That would be the last thing he remembered. Sakura and Sasuke looked after a small sound reached their ears, only to find the spot that Sai was sitting empty, except for his paints which were now tipped over, and covering the grass. Foolish little brother. Sasuke froze in place, as the voice of his hated brother reached his ears, followed by a loud yelp. He turned and saw red, as he found Itachi standing behind Sakura, his arm around her neck making her choke. Itachi, he raged, as he sped through hand seals, roaring, as he launched a giant fireball at him, not caring if Sakura died. The fireball exploded on impact, and scorched the ground, and surrounding trees. He smirked, as he saw a twitching body, badly burned, and near death only to growl, as he saw pink hair. Looking around, he found the damn man standing to the side with a blank face. Foolish little brother, you can't hope to defeat me. It's either save your teammate or chase after me, it's your choice. Sasuke screamed in anger, and blindly chased the man, leaving his team behind to die. Naruto chuckled, as he watched the Uchiha chase after a genjutsu made by Kyuubi. She had knocked out the Genin, then placed Sasuke under while he captured Sakura, and took her away before casting a strong over himself. Kyuubi cancelled the genjutsu over the clearing, making the burned body fade away along with Itachi, wherever they had run to. She dropped the Genin in the middle of the clearing, before turning to see her master call her over. I'd say that Team 7 has proven themselves to be a failure, he remarked before looking up to the sky, where the Hokage and Jounin would be watching through the Hokage's crystal ball. You have your proof of my claim. The Uchiha would easily murder his own teammates to get revenge on his brother. I wouldn't put it past him to abandon the village, as well. The Hokage and the other Jounin looked at Kakashi, who suddenly wished he was somewhere else. Team 7 will not be entering the exams, Hiruzen said with narrowed eyes, as if daring Kakashi to object, and furthermore, you and your team are forbidden to take any missions outside of the village, or even leave the walls until your team is fully prepared and properly trained. Naruto chuckled, as he thought of how pissed Team 7 would be. He didn't care about them being prepared, or embarrassing the village at all, just that he wanted Uchiha to suffer for attacking him in wave. He hadn't forgotten it, and it wasn't going to slight at all. But now he had more important things to deal with. Teams from most of the hidden villages would start arriving for the exams this week, and, as the Hokage's guard, he would have to follow him around more. Thankfully, the clone made it easy to be in more than one place at a time. Walking down the street with Kyuubi in tow, he saw Konohamaru Sarutobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi's grandson, dash down a path with his two friends close behind, calling "You can't get me." As he did. "Hey, let Konohamaru go, you bully." The young girl cried out, as he reached the corner. Looking, he saw Kankuro, the brother to his first pet Gar, holding the Hokage's grandson up by his collar. Looking up, he searched the area for his pet's chakra signature, and found it in a tree not too far away. Then he thought about his contract. Technically he was only obligated to protect the old man, not anyone else. But then again, saving the boy could give him the opportunity to have a little minion to use in the future. "You do well to accept his apology, and put him down," he said darkly, making the group look over to him. Konohamaru recognized him as his grandfather's bodyguard, and gave a sigh of relief as the sand ninja stopped threatening to hit him. "Or what?" Naruto smirked, taking slow and deliberate steps towards them. Imagine the political fallout when the village finds out that the Kazukige's children are arrested for attacking a child of a leaf. Kankuro started to interrupt, but Naruto beat him to the punch, especially when said child tried to apologize, and just so happens to be the Hokage's grandson. Paling, Kankuro released the boy, only for Konohamaru to kick him in the knee, and bolt away, hiding behind Naruto. "Why, you little?" the teen growled, as he reached for the bundle on his back. Naruto chuckled. "I should also mention that attacking either of us could be seen as an act of war. Konohamaru because of his lineage, and me because of my position here in the village." Konohamaru nodded. "Yeah, he's Gramps' personal bodyguard, and one of the highest rank ninja. He'll kick your butts any day. Not only that, but your sister looks angry." At the blonde's words, both Temari and Kankuro paled, as they turned to see Gaara standing on a branch of a tree overlooking them. Gaara was glaring down at them, her eyes holding much more anger than normal. Their sensei told them not to cause trouble in the village which would cause suspicion, and here are her older siblings acting disgracefully. Then again, she could care less about that. Her true reason for being angrier than normal was because her idiot of a brother was thinking of attacking her master, and the vibrator Naruto made her wear. "Gigar." Their teal-colored eyes narrowed on him. "Kankuro, shut up before I kill you." His mouth snapped shut. Konohamaru grinned. "Serves you right, bully." His taunt was cut short as Naruto brought his fist down on the top of his head, sending the child to the dirt with swirls for eyes. Making his two friends gasp, as he did the one thing no one dared to do. You have no right to mock him, Konohamaru. What kind of ninja doesn't look where he's going? Naruto questioned, as the boy pushed himself off the ground and held a bump on top of his head. Kyuubi stood silently behind the other two children, watching her master. The little orange-haired girl backed up and bumped into her, making her turn and up in surprise before going starry-eyed as she recognized the cloak. You're the ghost. She squealed in excitement, making Tamari's eyes whiten. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the name. The other boy with a runny nose looked confused. Who? She whirled to her friend. You don't know who the ghost is? She demanded before pointing at Naruto. She works for him and helps guard the Hokage. She's a master and doesn't need to depend on a teammate to protect her while using. She's my hero. Naruto and Caillou shared a glance as the girl looked back at her with starry eyes. I want to be just like you. Kyuubi had to admit the little girl's hero worship was flattering and slightly scary. Naruto looked to Gaara, who was looking at him, before motioning for her to leave. She took the hint and turned to her siblings. Let's go. Gaara knew that look and what he was conveying with his eyes. Tonight would be a real pleasurable night. Later that night, moonlight streamed in through the curtains of the master bedroom, illuminating part of the room in a soft white glow. Standing by the open window, Naruto felt the soft breeze against his skin and listened to the soft breathing behind him. He turned and looked at the two lumps laying limply in his bed, snuggling together. Gaara had shown up just like he wanted, and along with Kyuubi, they had a raunchy and extremely loud threesome which was sure to keep the Inizuka clan awake for hours after they finished. Kiba laid in his bed with the covers over his head, eyes wide while he curled up in a fetal position. Hours ago he awoke to the sounds of screaming. At first he had thought that someone was dying, but the following yells of Harder Master made his previous conclusion a distant hope. He laid there and laid there. At first he thought it was kind of hot, but after a while he heard his sister next door scream, "Kami, that's hot," before low pants and moans came from her room. Things progressed to the point where he thought of complaining to his mom, but soon after similar sounds were heard from his other wall, the wall he shared with his Kasan. Things continued to get worse for the boy as the dogs started mating all at the same time. But the worst had yet to come. Akamaru got into it too, mounting his legs and going to town. Peeking out from under the sheets, he saw the puppy looking at him with a smirk. You my bitch now. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.